Welcome to the deep dive. If you're tuning in right now, chances are you are keenly interested in optimizing your life.
Mm-hmm.
But you're also probably feeling, well, absolutely drowning in advice.
Oh, completely. It's an information tidal wave.
Right. I mean, we're hit daily by the productivity gurus telling us to wake up before dawn, the biohackers demanding we fast for 3 days, and then, the wellness experts preaching all these endless self-care routines.
And the sheer volume of information on how to be better it's paradoxical.
Yeah.
It's actually paralyzing.
Exactly. It's that analysis paralysis.
It is. When you're faced with that overwhelming flood of protocols, do I take this supplement? Do I run zone 2? Do I meditate? You often default to doing nothing.
Or you just kind of cherry pick these surface level tips that honestly deliver minimal returns for the effort you put in.
Precisely.
And that is exactly why we curated this deep dive. Our mission today is to be your ultimate shortcut. We have synthesized the recent cutting-edge insights from the world's absolute top experts.
Right.
We're talking about the specific neurological protocols from people like Dr. Andrew Huberman, the foundational metabolic hacks from Dave Asprey and Peter Attia, and the behavioral science and mindset shifts championed by figures like Jay Shetty and Melissa Febos.
And our goal is to synthesize these varied and, let's be honest, sometimes conflicting pieces of information into a single, cohesive, actionable blueprint.
Yes.
We're really moving beyond the superficial tips today. We're diving into the specific mechanisms, the deep why, and the practical how behind the structural, biological, and mental changes that genuinely deliver high-leverage results.
So this is a truly holistic stack.
It is. It's covering everything from cellular repair and gut health all the way to neuroplasticity and, maybe most importantly, the fundamental narrative you tell yourself.
The emphasis, as always, is 100% on practical, structure-based shifts that deliver high returns for you, the learner. We respect your time, so instead of some boring checklist, we've structured this as a dynamic conversation. The idea is to give you multiple, surprising aha moments you can implement immediately. Okay, let's unpack this entire system, starting with your immediate environment. We tend to be so internally focused when we talk about performance, right?
Always.
We ask, what supplement do I need, or how high is my cortisol? But our sources consistently point out a foundational truth. Before you can reliably master your internal state, you absolutely must first master your immediate environment.
This point cannot be overstated. It's the foundation of the pyramid.
And it's surprising how small changes to your surroundings, like, the type of light hitting your retina or the height of your screen, can fundamentally change your brain chemistry and alertness. And it's far cheaper and faster than any pill.
It is. Our brain, fundamentally, is an ancient organ running in a very modern and often, let's say, dysfunctional setting.
Right.
It evolved in an environment where the intensity and the color of light and the necessity of constant movement signaled safety and dictated our entire day.
But now we trap ourselves in these modern boxes.
Exactly. Fluorescent lights, sedentary positions.
Yeah.
We completely confuse the system. And that's why optimizing light exposure, what we're calling the dopamine hack, is probably the simplest and most powerful behavioral intervention you have in your toolkit.
Okay, so let's get into the specifics of that, the dopamine hack.
The core mechanism here, it all revolves around how light hitting your retina dictates the release of two primary categories of chemicals.
Two categories.
Right. First, you have the immediate stimulating chemicals, dopamine, which drives motivation and reward, and epinephrine or adrenaline, which sharpens focus and alertness.
Okay, the go chemicals.
The go chemicals. And second, you have the regulatory hormones like serotonin and its nightly conversion melatonin, which governs your entire sleep-wake cycle, your chronotype.
And the specific protocol for using light to stimulate these chemicals, and this is drawing directly from neuroscientific research, is incredibly precise. It starts the absolute instant you wake up.
As soon as your eyes are open.
You need to seek out bright light, ideally morning sunlight, within about 30 minutes of waking, and get that exposure for 10 to 15 minutes. This acts as a powerful, non-negotiable stimulant.
It's like a shot of espresso for your brain, but it's free.
It really is. It triggers that robust morning release of dopamine and epinephrine, and that sets your overall focus baseline high for the entire day.
And if you can't get natural sunlight because of weather or your schedule, you can use high-intensity artificial light. But natural light is always, always the gold standard because it contains the full spectrum your system needs to properly clock itself.
So that morning blast is literally telling your brain, what? The day has begun. Energy production starts now.
That's it, exactly. It's the starting gun for your circadian rhythm.
So if the morning blast is the accelerator, what about the brake? Because if you're trying to optimize sleep, you need a smooth deceleration, not just a crash.
Right, and the inverse protocol is just as important in the evening. As your day progresses, roughly 9 to 16 hours after you woke up and got that initial light hit,
That's a wide window.
it is, and that's because it adjusts to your natural chronotype, whether you're a morning lark or a night owl. But in that window, you need to start dimming the lights significantly.
So this is more than just turning off the main overhead light.
Oh, much more. We're talking lamps, dimmers, changing the whole ambiance. This reduction in light supports the natural, gradual production of serotonin, which then becomes the substrate for melatonin. This is absolutely crucial for making sleep onset far smoother and more restorative.
Okay, but let's be real. What about the inevitable problem of late-night screen time? The work email you have to answer, the show you want to finish.
The modern dilemma. For that, we need an active defense strategy. That's where the red lens glasses, the blue light filters come into play.
I've seen people wearing those. They look a little intense.
They do, but they work.
Yeah.
When you use them in the hours leading up to sleep, they actively filter out the specific blue wavelengths of light that are most potent at suppressing your melatonin production.
So it prevents the light from essentially sending an emergency signal to your brain that says, hey, it's high noon, stay alert, when it's actually 10 p.m. and your system should be winding down.
Precisely. And it's important to remember this isn't just about sleep quality for that night. It's about your energy and focus the next day.
Right, it's a cumulative effect.
It is. If you artificially suppress melatonin, you compromise the deep, restorative phases of sleep that are absolutely essential for cognitive cleaning and memory consolidation. Light optimization is fundamentally focus optimization.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Now that we've mastered the general lighting of the room, let's zoom in on the immediate workspace configuration. We're moving beyond simple ergonomics here.
Way beyond. The sources reveal that how you position yourself relative to your screen matters dramatically to your ability to sustain high-level cognitive function.
So it's not just about a comfy chair.
Not at all. What's truly fascinating is the almost primal physical link between your screen height and your alertness. While research has demonstrated that positioning your screens at or even slightly above eye level triggers specific neuronal activity in your brainstem. These are the neurons that are associated with scanning the horizon and active engagement.
So that's the surprising mechanism. It's not just about aligning your neck so you don't get cervical strain.
Exactly. When you look slightly up, your posture subtly shifts and your brain defaults to a state of engagement. It's sending a signal. I am surveying the environment. I must be alert and ready for input.
And conversely, when you look down, which is the typical laptop hunch for so many of us, that posture and the visual field it creates often signals something else entirely.
It signals introspection, reading, or even submission. It's perfect for curling up with a novel, but it is terrible for sustained, high-focus analytical output that requires high energy.
It's amazing that it connects back to these ancient survival mechanisms. And since modern work so often demands hours of this high-focus state, we need systems to combat the inevitable cognitive fatigue.
We do. And this brings us to a specific, time-based strategy drawn from the sources called the 455 rule.
This protocol is very detailed, and it requires real discipline, I think. For every 45 minutes of intense focus work, and that means deep, single-task effort, you must take a 5-minute cognitive break.
Right, but the mechanism of the break is the entire point. It's not just any break.
It's not just scrolling Instagram for 5 minutes.
Yeah, no, that's the worst thing you could do. You need to relax your eyes using what's called panoramic vision.
Panoramic vision. So that means stepping away from the near-focus task.
And looking at a distant point, a horizon, a tree outside the window, the furthest wall in the room. This gives your ciliary muscles, which are the muscles that control the lens for near vision, a mandatory rest.
And here's the crucial caveat that defeats most people. That 5-minute break must not include looking at your phone.
That is the rule that makes or breaks the entire system.
That phone rule is the difference between genuine rest and simple task switching. Checking social media, watching a quick reel, answering a text. It all still requires your ciliary muscles to focus intensely on near vision, high contrast, high stress visual input.
You're just replacing one source of fatigue with another. The 455 rule is about genuine ocular and cognitive relaxation before you return to the next 45-minute sprint. It's a reset.
Okay, now let's consider a factor that I think very few people think about: the architecture around them. The sources explore something called the cathedral effect.
Right. This is where we get into a bit of environmental psychology. The fundamental idea is that the physical structure of the space you inhabit should match the kind of thinking you need to do.
So high-ceiling environments, they're found to be best suited for abstract, creative, and expansive thinking.
Yes, and the mechanism is believed to involve a subconscious feeling of physical and cognitive freedom. When the ceiling is high, we feel less constrained, which often correlates to a more unconstrained thought process.
It's like your brain has more room to roam.
In a way, yes. Research suggests that high ceilings may actually promote brain activity associated with alpha waves, which are linked to relaxed, intuitive, and creative states. This is the ideal environment for brainstorming, connecting disparate concepts, or tackling complex, nonlinear problems.
And conversely, low-ceiling environments are actually optimized for detailed, analytic, and intensely focused work.
Exactly. If you're doing your taxes or coding or writing a dense report or performing fine motor tasks, being in a cozier, lower space might surprisingly boost your performance.
Why is that?
The visual boundaries in a lower space encourage your focus to turn inward onto the task at hand. It provides a sense of enclosure and protection, which reduces the environmental distractions that might pull your attention outward.
It's a powerful, subtle hack. So if you have any control over where you work, choosing a quiet, low-ceiling cubicle for detailed analysis versus a vast open-plan office for creative strategy, you can instantly leverage this psychological effect.
It's about matching your space to your task.
We've optimized the light, we've optimized the screen position. Now we have to talk about the physical body operating in that optimized space. The sources highlight a truly terrifying statistic for the modern knowledge worker.
It's a scary one.
Sitting for over 4 hours a day increases your overall mortality risk by a staggering 15% per hour after that 4-hour mark.
Per hour, it compounds.
This risk accumulates, and it's a profound systemic issue that is too often ignored because, chronic sitting is just so normalized in our culture.
It's the silent killer of the desk worker, regardless of how often you exercise, and that's the key. We simply cannot rely on our 45-minute evening gym session to counteract 8 to 10 hours of static, low metabolic sitting.
So the solution requires integrating movement back into our essential daily rhythm, not treating it as a separate scheduled event.
Exactly. We achieve this through the twin strategies of exercise snacks and life stacking.
Okay, let's define the snack first. It sounds fun.
It is. The exercise snack protocol means actively counteracting prolonged sitting by incorporating small, intense bursts of movement every 45 minutes.
Which, hey, as luck would have it, aligns perfectly with our 455 focus rule.
It's almost like it was planned that way. These are micro bouts of activity designed to interrupt your static posture and briefly elevate your heart rate.
So we're not talking about a full workout.
Not at all. We're talking about doing 20 air squats by your desk, walking a flight of stairs, performing a minute of planking, or just walking a lap around the office or house. The goal is simply to interrupt the static metabolic slump that occurs when you sit continuously.
And then there's the philosophy of life stacking, which is championed by leading movement experts. The idea here is to treat movement not as optional exercise, but as non-optional daily nutrition.
That's the mindset shift. You are intentionally combining tasks to meet multiple needs simultaneously.
Give me an example.
Okay, so instead of driving to the post office and then doing a separate evening workout, you walk to the post office and the grocery store. Maybe you wear a weighted vest, and we'll definitely get to that later, and you do it with a friend or your kids.
So you're integrating chores, movement, socialization, and bonding all in one activity.
Exactly. You're not finding time to move. You are making movement a non-negotiable part of your errands and routines. The concept is all about efficiency maximizing your output from a minimal time investment.
So if you look at the specific risk mitigation, what is the actionable goal for the workday? If we're trying to mitigate this compounding 15% hourly mortality risk that comes after 4 hours of sitting.
The sources recommend aiming to stand for 50% of the workday. That specific 50% threshold is cited as the minimum requirement for significantly altering the adverse metabolic risk profile that comes with chronic sitting.
So it's not about never sitting, it's just about breaking it up.
You must break up the total duration of sitting. That's the key.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've optimized the external environment and established a strategy for essential physical movement. Now, let's move inside to internal biochemistry.
Right.
We're transitioning from controlling the surroundings to controlling the engine, focusing on these really high-impact protocols for cellular repair, energy efficiency, and crucially, long-term weight maintenance.
So if section 1 was about immediate alertness and focus, this section is about deep, long-term cellular sustainability.
Oh.
And I think we have to start with one of the most powerful yet, well, conceptually daunting strategies, therapeutic
That's
fasting.
a big one, but the payoff is huge.
I want to introduce the 72-hour protocol with a really compelling anecdote from Dave Asprey, one of the experts in our source material.
Yeah.
He details how aggressive protocols, including these extended fasts, were instrumental in purportedly reversing his biological clock by 2 decades. Wow. Yeah, and this was after he suffered from debilitating chronic issues like prediabetes and arthritis in his 20s. He highlights the 3-day fast as being uniquely potent due to what it unlocks in the body.
And the reason it's uniquely potent is because of what happens inside the body, this complex, choreographed physiological shift that takes place over that 3-day cycle. Many people engage in intermittent fasting, maybe 16 hours or even 24-hour fasts, and those offer benefits.
For sure.
But 72 hours pushes the system past a critical metabolic threshold, and that's what fully activates these deep cellular cleaning processes.
Let's break down that timeline precisely, because the psychological hurdle of 3 days without food is massive.
Yeah.
I think understanding the physiological shifts can provide the motivation needed to cross that barrier.
Absolutely. So day 1 is primarily about fuel depletion. The body is systematically burning through its available glucose sugar and its stored glycogen reserves in the muscles and liver.
And this is when you feel it the most, right?
Yeah. This is when you feel it. During this phase, you will likely experience the strongest hunger signals and potentially some irritability, headaches, maybe what people call keto flu symptoms, as your body realizes the usual immediate fuel source is offline.
This is the mental challenge that trips most people up.
It is, but if you can push through, day 2 is where the metabolic magic starts. This is the crucial metabolic switch.
Okay.
Once your glycogen stores are sufficiently depleted, the body moves primarily to burning stored fat and producing ketones for energy. This transition is often accompanied by a dramatic and very counterintuitive drop in hunger.
Really? So you actually feel less hungry on day 2?
For many people, yes. And crucially, this transition signals the activation of autophagy.
Autophagy, I've heard that word a lot. Break it down for me.
It literally means self-eating.
Yeah.
It's the cellular repair and cleaning mechanism. The cell, sensing this low nutrient input, starts recycling old, damaged, or dysfunctional components, old proteins, damaged mitochondria, cellular debris, and uses them to create new, efficient ones.
So it's a deep spring cleaning at the cellular level.
That's the perfect analogy. It optimizes all the cell's machinery.
And day 3 is the crescendo of the fast, where the deepest benefits occur.
This is the peak. Ketone levels are at their highest, and the body's deep conservation efforts signal the activation of stem cells. The mitochondria, those cellular powerhouses that produce ATP, our energy currency becomes significantly more efficient.
Why is that?
Because the system is operating in this deep conservation and repair mode. It's essentially upgrading its own hardware while the system is temporarily shut down for maintenance. This is why that 72-hour mark is seen as the threshold for maximizing longevity and rejuvenation benefits.
Okay, but we have to emphasize the caution that's detailed in the sources. Breaking the fast must be done with extreme care.
Oh, this is so important. You cannot shock your digestive system, which has been dormant, with a massive, rich meal. You'll regret it.
So what's the recommendation?
Start small, very small. Perhaps with bone broth, which provides electrolytes and collagen, followed by small amounts of cooked protein and easily digestible vegetables. You want to avoid raw foods and simple sugars immediately to allow your gut to gradually resume its normal digestive and absorptive functions without distress.
Gentle reentry. Got it. Now, let's talk about something that plagues so many people. Weight maintenance.
Great challenge.
Anyone who has successfully lost a significant amount of weight knows the frustration of the inevitable weight regain. You do the hard work, you look great, but then the body seems to fight back and the weight creeps back up, often making you heavier than when you started.
And our sources detail the core driver of this problem, the defensive drop in resting metabolic rate, or RMR.
Explain that.
It's a devastating evolutionary response. When you lose weight, your body doesn't see a successful diet. It senses starvation and a crisis. To protect itself, it reduces your RMR, the number of calories you burn, just existing significantly to conserve energy.
So your metabolism literally slows down.
It does. This can lead to a sustained drop of hundreds of calories per day, which makes weight maintenance almost impossible unless you continue to eat far, far less than someone who has naturally maintained that same weight.
But the sources highlight a fascinating clinical study that suggests a way to hack this metabolic defense system, something they call the gravitostat.
The gravitostat. I love this. It's essentially your body's internal biological scale, which senses load and pressure, not just mass.
Okay, so how do they test this?
The clinical research involved two groups who were put on the exact same weight loss diet. The diet-only group experienced a substantial RMR drop. We're talking a reduction in caloric burn of around 250 calories per day.
That's huge. That's a whole snack or a small meal.
It's the main culprit in weight regain. But here is the profound difference. The second group wore a weighted vest that matched the exact amount of weight they had lost.
So they maintain the sense of load on their body.
Precisely. This group experienced a negligible RMR drop, only 16 calories. By maintaining the physical pressure and load, they effectively signal to their body, hey, we are still heavy, we still require this level of metabolic fire and energy expenditure, even though their actual fat mass had decreased.
They tricked the system.
They tricked the system. And the long-term impact solidifies this as a structural solution. The 2-year follow-up data from this study showed that the weighted vest group regained only half the weight compared to the diet-only group.
That is incredible. They successfully tricked their body's ancient conservation mechanism.
They did. So the actionable tip is simple, cheap, and brilliant. Incorporate a weighted vest or even just a heavy rucksack into your daily activities or your walks. The goal is to aim for roughly 11% of your current body weight.
And consistently wearing that load activates that internal gravitostat and helps maintain your metabolic fire.
It prevents the system from prematurely going into deep energy conservation mode after a successful diet. It's a game changer for maintenance.
When we shift to exercise for longevity, there's a really complex dance between necessary stress and necessary recovery. The conversation often falls into this trap of more is always better, but the sources provide some crucial nuance to avoid both the low-end risk and the high-end danger.
It's all about finding that Goldilocks zone.
So let's start with the non-negotiable floor, the low-end warning. Low fitness levels are disastrous.
They really are. Being in the bottom 25% of VO2 max, which is the maximum rate of oxygen consumption during intense exercise, essentially a measure of your cardiorespiratory fitness, carries a 4 to 5 times higher mortality risk compared to those in the elite fitness level.
4 to 5 times. That's a staggering number. You simply cannot ignore cardio fitness if longevity is the goal.
You can't. But the counterpoint, the caution against extremism, is equally critical. We're often motivated by the image of the extreme endurance athlete, but the sources discuss the danger of excessive, vigorous cardio.
Right. They detailed the case of an elite athlete who, due to relentless training, actually developed arterial plaque and a low ejection fraction of 45, which indicates a compromised heart function.
It's a perfect example of how the dose makes the poison, even for something as beneficial as exercise.
So the body needs a careful balance between that metabolic stress and adequate systemic recovery. High-intensity work, which is defined as zone 4 or 5 cardio, is essential for fitness adaptation, but it's also extremely high stress on the system.
Very high stress. Therefore, the prescription is to stay within an exercise Goldilocks zone. For long-term healthy aging, you should limit your vigorous effort, the kind of training that leaves you unable to speak to, under 75 minutes per week.
Under 75 minutes, that's not a lot.
It's not. But it provides the necessary dose of high-intensity stimulus without pushing the cardiovascular system into a state of chronic damage or preventing a systemic recovery.
So if you're limiting vigorous work to 75 minutes, where should the rest of your training volume go?
This is the key. The sources, referencing insights from longevity specialists like Dr. Peter Attia, emphasize Zone 2 training.
Zone 2, let's define that for everyone.
Zone 2 is sustainable effort where you can still hold a conversation, though it might be slightly strained. This is the path for achieving high total training volume, especially in midlife.
And what are the benefits of staying in that zone?
It significantly improves your mitochondrial health, it increases your body's fat oxidation capacity, and it provides immense cardiovascular benefits without the recovery debt or systemic wear and tear associated with chronic, vigorous overtraining. It is a sustainable foundation for a long, healthy life.
We've optimized the external environment, we've fixed the metabolic strategies with fasting and weighted vests. Now we're pivoting to the internal machinery, the gut, the hormones, and the specific compounds that can boost cellular performance and energy.
This is the section where we look at the really targeted internal hacks. And when we discuss internal hacks, the gut is the undeniable starting point.
It's not just a digestive tract.
Not at all. It's a command center. Your holistic health either thrives or fails based on the state of your intestinal ecosystem. The gut immunity link is absolutely profound. The sources point out that 70% of your entire immune system resides in the gut lining.
70%. That's the vast majority.
It is. This means that dysbiosis, an imbalance in the microbial environment, is not just an inconvenience. It's a critical driver of chronic inflammation and systemic issues across the entire body.
So the goal is balance and diversity.
Yeah.
Dr. Will Bulsiewicz, one of the experts we've synthesized, details what he calls the 4 workhorses of the microbiome, the inputs you need to prioritize every single day to foster a thriving gut.
The first is fiber, which is the primary fuel source for your beneficial gut bacteria.
Okay.
The second is polyphenols, which is essentially the instruction to eat the rainbow. You want to focus on brightly colored fruits, vegetables, and deeply pigmented foods that provide vital microbial signaling compounds.
Makes sense. What's number 3?
The third is healthy fats, particularly omega-3s, which are powerfully anti-inflammatory. And finally, fermented foods such as yogurt, sauerkraut, and kimchi, which introduce new beneficial live bacterial cultures directly into the system.
And that diversity is key. The specific, actionable goal recommended by Dr. Bulsiewicz is to aim for 30 different plants per week.
And let's be clear, that is not 30 servings of plants. It's 30 different types of plants, different vegetables, nuts, seeds, fruits, legumes.
Why 30? What's the magic number there?
Because the broader the array of inputs you provide, the more diverse and resilient your microbial environment becomes. It makes it better equipped to handle stress and occasional dietary lapses.
So beyond what we eat, we also have to consider the timing of consumption.
Absolutely. The microbiome, like the rest of our body, has its own circadian rhythm. We can support this rhythm through circadian eating.
And that means?
That means implementing a 10-hour eating window and ensuring you cease eating 3 to 4 hours before you go to bed. This is vital because it allows the gut to enter its crucial repair cycle.
A time when it should be resting and rebuilding its lining, rather than being forced to work late into the night digesting a massive meal.
Exactly. And in addition to timing and content, there are some immediate digestive hygiene hacks that can improve absorption and enzyme function, often delivering immediate returns.
Okay, what are they?
The first is almost too simple. Avoid drinking large volumes of fluid with your meals.
I'm guilty of that. Why is it a problem?
Because it dilutes your essential digestive enzymes like hydrochloric acid in the stomach. It makes it significantly harder for your body to break down and efficiently absorb nutrients. Stick to small sips if you must, but save the massive glass of water for 30 minutes before or after the meal.
Okay, that's a simple fix. What else?
The purely mechanical element. Chew your food thoroughly. Again, it's ignored in our rush, but proper chewing initiates mechanical digestion and signals the stomach to start the chemical processes.
And finally, a great stimulation hack. Start meals with something bitter.
Like arugula, radicchio, or a small piece of ginger. The bitter taste immediately stimulates the vagus nerve and triggers a robust release of digestive juices, preparing your system for optimal digestion.
I have to interject with a critical safety note from the sources regarding cooking practices.
Yeah.
When you're cooking foods, especially acidic ingredients, on aluminum foil.
Yes, this is important.
Always line the foil with parchment paper first. This simple barrier prevents the leaching of aluminum, which is a neurotoxin, into your food, particularly when it's exposed to heat and acidity.
A simple but crucial tip. And before we move on, we have to briefly touch on the profound emotional connection of the gut.
Yes.
The sources detail a connection between declining estrogen levels, which is common in midlife women, a weakened gut barrier, and increased bloodstream toxins, specifically lipopolysaccharides or LPS.
So the gut becomes leaky.
It does. This intestinal breach allows toxins to enter circulation, leading to systemic inflammation. And while the precise percentage is highly debated, experts like Dr. Bulsiewicz emphasize that this chronic inflammatory state is strongly correlated with a vast majority of chronic anxiety and depression cases.
So it's a powerful argument that mental health often starts with gut integrity.
It really is, and that's reflected in the broader philosophy. Dr. Bulsiewicz made the moving point that his own health journey wasn't just biochemical. His ultimate healing was relational, stemming from reconnecting with his estranged father.
Wow.
It just reinforces that the pursuit of health is truly holistic. It involves biochemistry, diet, and emotional connection.
Okay, moving from the gut to systemic chemistry, let's discuss hormone balance, particularly addressing issues that often arise in midlife that are frequently misdiagnosed or just plain ignored.
Right, and the sources specifically address the often missed issue of low testosterone in women. It is traditionally viewed as a male hormone, but it's absolutely critical for women's energy, muscle maintenance, and cognition.
And what are the symptoms of low testosterone in women?
They're disruptive. We're talking persistent brain fog, chronic sleep disruption, and significant muscle loss, even if you're training hard.
So what's the intervention discussed?
Low dose, off-label use of testosterone at about 1/10 the typical male dose, which is noted to significantly alleviate these chronic midlife symptoms. It helps maintain lean muscle mass, which in itself is a huge longevity factor, and it improves mental clarity.
But what about the safety concerns? I know many listeners will be thinking about cardiovascular health or cancer risk.
And that's a valid concern. But the sources are reassuring, citing large clinical trials like the Traverse trial. This research found that when monitored correctly and administered at appropriate doses, testosterone therapy does not increase the risk of cardiovascular events or prostate cancer.
So the emphasis is on correct monitoring by a specialist.
Absolutely non-negotiable. Now, we're going to pivot to a high-impact piece of cognitive advice that seems tangential but is so critical for long-term brain health and longevity: hearing loss.
Hearing loss.
The clear advice is to treat it early and aggressively. Untreated hearing loss is identified as one of the top modifiable risk factors for dementia.
Wow. Why is that? What's the connection?
It's all about cognitive load. If you can't hear conversations clearly, your brain has to constantly work overtime using cognitive resources that should be dedicated to memory, planning, or complex thought. Just fill in the gaps and process muffled speech.
So it's just exhausting the brain.
Day in and day out. This constant, unnecessary cognitive burden fundamentally stresses and fatigues the brain, accelerating cognitive decline. You need to treat your hearing as seriously as you treat your blood pressure.
That's a powerful statement. Now let's talk about the specific compounds that the sources highlight as genuine, science-backed game changers for boosting energy, longevity, and acute focus.
Right, we're moving past generic vitamins into highly specific performance molecules, and we have to start with creatine.
Creatine, for too long, has been relegated to the realm of bodybuilding supplements.
It has, but its true power is biochemical. It acts as an ATP buffer. ATP, adenosine triphosphate, is the energy currency of the cell. Creatine is essentially a high-speed, rechargeable battery for both the brain and the muscles.
It's the backup energy system.
Exactly. This buffering capacity allows your cells, particularly your neurons, to rapidly replenish energy during intense cognitive or physical tasks. And that is why the sources highlight it as being particularly beneficial for women who generally have lower baseline creatine stores.
And crucially, for counteracting the crippling cognitive effects of acute sleep deprivation.
It's literal energy insurance for your brain. Now, if you look at the cognitive protocol specifically, maximizing the brain benefits may require higher doses. The research suggests aiming for 10 to 20 grams per day, which is significantly more than the standard 5-gram bodybuilding maintenance dose.
And what about getting it to dissolve? It's notoriously gritty.
A simple implementation tip for better absorption: mix it in hot water or hot coffee. The heat significantly improves its solubility, leading to better absorption without all that residue settling at the bottom of your glass.
Okay, and a final, crucial safety and purity warning.
Yes. Creatine is one of the most studied supplements backed by over 700 trials, and it's proven not to damage the kidneys in healthy individuals. However, because it's so cheap to produce, some manufacturers use cheap, unregulated sources.
So you have to vet your brand.
Rigorously. These cheap sources may contain contaminants like dicyndamide, which has the dangerous potential to convert into cyanide in the stomach. Purity is non-negotiable here.
Okay, next up is NAD plus or nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. This molecule is absolutely vital for mitochondrial function, your energy production, and for DNA repair. It's essentially critical for cellular youth and resilience.
But here's the inherent problem. The raw NAD+ molecule is simply too large to cross the cell membranes efficiently when you take it as a standard pill or even via most IVs.
The bioavailability issue.
Exactly. The solution is not to take NAD+ directly, but to take precursors that your body is adept at synthesizing into the molecule it needs. The sources highlight nicotinamide riboside, or NR, because it effectively crosses those cell membranes. Once inside, the cell can rapidly convert it into functional NAD+ IMPAN.
And the anecdotal evidence is compelling for systemic long-term issues. We heard the story of Robert Fried, who resolved 10 years of chronic knee pain and persistent poor sleep after just 3 months of consistent NR usage.
Which suggests that boosting NAD+ function moves beyond mere energy to address deeper systemic inflammation and mitochondrial dysfunction linked to these chronic problems.
Right. Now we get to the compound that surprises and perhaps raises eyebrows the most: We must handle this with extreme caution and precision.
We do.
We are discussing the isolated compound nicotine, strictly separated from tobacco smoke. Wait, are you seriously telling us to consider nicotine? Can we just pause for a second on that?
We absolutely need to pause because the social programming around this compound is overwhelmingly negative, and rightly so, given its primary delivery mechanism for decades. But the science requires us to separate the molecule from the delivery system,
So we are talking about clean, isolated nicotine.
which activates a very specific pathway in the brain, the alpha-7 nicotinic acetylcholine receptor.
So we're talking about a specific molecular switch that is being flipped.
Precisely. And the activation of this alpha-7 receptor is fascinating because it is highly expressed on our immune cells. When it's activated, it inhibits the release of pro-inflammatory cytokines.
So that means that nicotine in this clean form acts not just as a stimulant, but as a powerful immunomodulator.
It helps to regulate the body's inflammatory response. That's the key.
That shifts the conversation entirely. It's modulating the immune response, not just giving you a cognitive pick.
Right.
So what are the clinical applications that the sources reference for this receptor activation?
The clinical applications are genuinely surprising and suggest targeted therapeutic use. Studies have shown that transdermal nicotine patches or gum can reduce reaction time and improve attention in people with ADHD,
Wow.
reduce aggression, and enhance communication in individuals with autism spectrum disorder, and significantly reduce the frequency and intensity of the tics in Tourette syndrome.
It's proof that a compound we universally associate with harm has profound targeted therapeutic uses when you strip it of the delivery mechanism. The carbon monoxide, the thousands of carcinogenic toxins found in tobacco smoke.
The purity and the dose make all the difference. The medium is everything.
And we must reiterate, for absolute clarity, the critical disclaimer here.
Yes. This research and this entire discussion is strictly about pharmaceutical-grade patches or gum-clean, controlled nicotine delivery, not smoking or vaping. Smoking and vaping remain profoundly harmful to the lungs, heart, and the entire vascular system. We've optimized the external environment, fixed the metabolism, and fine-tuned the chemistry with targeted compounds. But the deepest, most durable, and most profound changes, they happen when we optimize the internal narrative and deliberately break our emotional loops.
This is where we rewire the mental operating system itself.
It's the top of the pyramid.
This is the ultimate hack, because your physical circumstances can be optimized for perfection. You can be getting 75 minutes of Zone 2 training and taking all your precursors, but if your internal operating system is running faulty, self-limiting code, you will still self-sabotage, burn out, or fail to achieve genuine contentment.
You'll just be a very fit, well-supplemented, unhappy person.
Exactly. The power of the internal narrative is best demonstrated through an anecdote. I love the example shared by Melissa Fabos regarding the narrative trap.
It's a great story.
She ruptured a spinal disc, a severe physical injury requiring rest. But she continued running excessively, often in agony. Why? Because her deep-seated personal story was that she was a healthy, physically resilient person who exercises.
Her self-identity was so tied up in that description that she prioritized the story over her body's obvious reality. She couldn't begin the physical healing process until she confronted that identity and rewrote her narrative.
And we are all constrained by the stories we tell ourselves about who we are. I'm not good at math. I'm always late. I'm a victim of this situation.
These stories become our reality. So how do we dismantle these powerful, often unconsciously held stories? The technique for rewriting the story involves 3 very deliberate steps.
Okay, what's step 1?
Step 1, audit the current story you tell yourself. This requires painful honesty. What are those pervasive self-limiting beliefs that start with I am or I always? Write them down. For example, I am defined by my past trauma, or I am incapable of maintaining discipline.
Then step 2, identify where you have agency and control. Even if 90% of a challenging situation is outside your control, a global pandemic, a market crash, focus intensely and exclusively on the 10% you can influence.
And this is so important because it shifts your internal state from passive observation and learned helplessness to active engagement and empowerment.
And finally, step 3.
Revise this story to integrate new information and choice. This is the neuroplastic moment. You change that internal monologue from the passive declarative, I am a victim of circumstances, to the definitive, I am choosing to navigate this difficult environment, or I am someone who prioritizes recovery over performance today.
So the story shifts from a fixed passive biography to an active chosen direction. And that revised identity then dictates the necessary behavior changes.
Exactly, which brings us to breaking emotional habit loops.
Right. Why do we keep repeating behaviors we know are detrimental? Why do we scroll when we know we should be sleeping? Jay Shetty, a prominent voice in behavioral science, provides the fundamental answer. 90% of our bad habits are primarily emotional escapes.
We aren't doing the thing because we love the thing. We are doing the thing because we are seeking relief from an uncomfortable feeling, be it stress, boredom, a need for comfort, or a need for stimulation. The habit is just the cheapest, fastest way to get that temporary reward.
So that underlying emotional need is the true target. If you don't address the emotion, the habit will just morph into a new behavior that delivers the same emotional payoff.
That's why just stopping a habit rarely works. You need to replace it. Jay Shetty details a powerful 3-part break loop technique to tackle this.
Okay, part one.
First, identify the trigger. Pinpoint the immediate prompt that sends you spiraling. Is it environmental? The phone sitting on the bedside table? Is it situational? The 3 p.m. slump at work? Is it emotional? The feeling of anxiety after a tough meeting? You have to be forensic about the prompt.
Second, replace the reward. This is the hardest part because you must find a healthy replacement that satisfies the exact underlying emotional need.
Can you give an example?
Sure. If you are eating high-sugar comfort food because you feel isolated, swap the sugar for connection. Call a friend. If you seek sugar for an energy boost, swap the sugar for a burst of exercise, an exercise snack, to get genuine physiological energy.
And Shetty himself traded the isolation of video games, which provided structured stimulation, with the socialization and connection he found through playing pickleball. The reward must be satisfying, but healthy.
And third, and most powerfully,
Change your identity. This loops right back to what we were just discussing. You have to shift your internal self-talk from the tentative, fragile statement, I'm trying to quit this bad habit, to the definitive, robust identity. I am not someone who chooses that.
once a behavior conflicts with your core chosen identity, the resistance to that behavior becomes nearly automatic.
Which is where neuroplasticity comes in. We know the brain is physically flexible, it's malleable.
We know this from the classic, compelling example of the London taxi drivers, whose hippocampi, the brain centers for memory and spatial navigation, physically grew larger as they memorized the city's impossibly complex maps.
It's the perfect demonstration. Your brain structure is not fixed, it can be deliberately reshaped, and you can leverage this to manage stress and anxiety. The sources highlight several highly actionable, non-pharmacological tools for applying neuroplasticity to emotional health.
The first is expressive writing.
The protocol is key here. Write about your deep feelings regarding a stressful event for 15 to 20 minutes, for 3 to 5 consecutive days. This isn't journaling about your grocery list, it's deep emotional processing.
So what's the mechanism? Why does this work?
This structured process helps you process the emotion, organize the chaos of the experience, and crucially, it offloads the cognitive burden from your working memory. When the trauma or stressor is written down, the brain no longer has to devote constant internal resources to looping or rehearsing the event.
That reduction in cognitive load frees up mental space for focus and productivity.
Exactly. The second tool is simpler, but backed by neuroscience. Positive self-talk. It can sound a little saccharine, but repeated, intentional positive self-talk actively and physically reshapes your neural pathways.
When you consistently apply positive internal affirmations, you are stimulating the release of those positive neurotransmitters we mentioned earlier, dopamine and serotonin, essentially acting as a self-administered mental prescription. You are building positive neural circuits that eventually become the default pathway.
And finally, we must emphasize the concept of state management. This is the essential order of operations. You must change your physiology, your emotional and physical state first before you try to change your strategy.
I love this point. If you try to analyze your finances, solve a complex work problem, or make a difficult relationship decision while you're in a fearful, angry, or exhausted state,
your strategy will inherently be defensive, flawed, or short-sighted. The physiological state dictates the quality of the strategy.
Tony Robbins' incantations are a dramatic but effective example of this principle in action. He used embodied affirmations, shouted while running, to physically shift his posture, his breath, and his focus, moving his state instantly from anger and fear to determination and power.
So the takeaway is, change your physical posture, control your breath, alter your voice and expression. Then, and only then, attempt to implement a new, complex life strategy.
Okay, we've talked about longevity strategies for the body and mind, but what about the longevity of the soul, the core quality of your life? We need an emotional anchor here, and we turn to the final wisdom of those facing the end.
Bronnie Ware, who worked for years in palliative care, cataloged these insights, providing us with a definitive roadmap for prioritizing the second half of life. She shared the deeply poignant story of a patient named Grace.
Grace stayed in an unhappy, emotionally draining marriage for decades. Her lifelong dream was to travel the world, but she delayed it, always waiting for the right time or the right financial situation.
And by the time she was finally free to go, her husband had passed. She was terminally ill herself.
It's just a heartbreaking story. It's a profound moment of realization when the story you told yourself about your life, the stability, the duty, clashes with the ultimate reality of what you sacrificed. Grace made Bronnie promise to live true to herself.
And that tragedy, and many others like it, resulted in the definitive list of the top 5 regrets to avoid, which serves as a powerful guide for how we should prioritize our actions right now, today.
The list is less about achievement and more about authenticity and emotional courage. Number 1, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not what others expected.
Number 2, I wish I hadn't worked so hard.
Number 3, I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings.
Number 4, I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends.
And number 5, I wish I had let myself be happier.
The theme across all 5 is agency, emotional honesty, and presence. It's not about how many zeros were in your bank account or how much vigorous exercise you logged. It's about the emotional quality of your life and the courage to choose happiness and authenticity over comfort or perceived duty.
We have spent this entire deep dive discussing optimization, strategies, protocols, and relentless striving. So let's end this section with the ultimate counterintuitive hack, the necessity of profound rest and simply being.
This comes from a Zen technique described by the teacher Henry Schuckman. In a world defined by the tyranny of the agenda, the constant need to do, achieve, schedule, and fix, he suggests granting yourself a sanctioned, endorsed pocket of time where you are allowed to do absolutely nothing.
This isn't just passive resting like watching TV. It's intentional non-striving. No goals, no measuring, no agenda, no optimizing.
Precisely. The purpose of this intentional pause is to allow the entire system, mind, and body to power down like an idling engine. You detach from the agenda, from expectation, and from the stories of who you should be.
And when you grant yourself that radical refuge, you often return to a fundamental sense of intrinsic peace that underlies all the striving.
It is the ultimate, non-negotiable mental reset button.
Okay, let's circle back and recap the most surprising and high-leverage insights from this comprehensive holistic deep dive. We learned that the weighted vest hack is a profound structural solution to a metabolic problem, essentially tricking your body's gravitostat to prevent that devastating post-diet RMR drop.
We detailed the 72-hour fasting cycle, understanding how pushing past day 2 activates true autophagy and stem cell regeneration.
We dove into the counterintuitive science of clean, non-smoking nicotine specifically, how patches or gum can act as powerful immunomodulators by targeting the alpha-7 receptor, suggesting therapeutic uses where we previously only saw danger.
And on the mindset front, we unlocked the immediate, powerful mechanism of rewriting our identity, moving from I'm trying to achieve X to the definitive and non-optional I am someone who chooses X.
The overarching theme here, though, is the total holistic connection. True wellness is not siloed into separate departments. Your gut health directly affects your anxiety levels, which are linked to your hormone balance.
The light exposure you get dictates your focus and performance, and the story you tell yourself fundamentally dictates your body's ability to heal and your capacity to live authentically. These systems all talk to each other.
And while our sources provide all these detailed protocols for achieving peak performance across all these domains,
the wisdom is in the balance and the initiation. As Jay Shetty noted, we must balance the pursuit of perfection with the practicality of taking one step at a time. Don't let the sheer complexity of the total optimization stack paralyze your ability to start the very first hack.
whether that is simply getting sunlight this morning or chewing your food thoroughly tonight.
Exactly.
We talked earlier about treating movement as essential daily nutrition and the need to stand for 50% of the day to mitigate mortality risk. Now consider this final provocative thought, drawing on those ultimate regrets of the dying. Are you treating the courage to live authentically, to express your deepest feelings, and to cultivate genuine happiness with the same level of non-negotiable priority as your daily protein intake or your weekly VO2 max target?
Something profound for you to chew on this week. We'll see you on the next deep dive.